There are places in this world defined by their emptiness. A vacant chair, a silent telephone, and for Arthur, a man who had become a ghost in his own life, it was his entire cavernous apartment he was drowning in quiet, and the world had taught him to see only the void. So, when a small, black cat began to linger at the edges of his existence, Arthur saw only another kind of shadow, a symbol of the misfortune that dogged his steps. He didn't know this creature was not an omen of his end, but the only thing that could possibly save him. Arthur lived his life in shades of gray. Since Alara had passed, color seemed to drain from the world, leaving behind only the monotonous tick of the clock and the hollow echo of his own footsteps. His world had shrunk to the four walls of his apartment and the predictable route to his office. And then, the shadow appeared, a scrawny black cat with eyes like twin paradots. It appeared one evening, a silent spectator to Arthur's solitary return. Arthur, steeped in old folklore, felt a primal twinge, a black cat crossing your path. He quickened his pace, but the cat didn't cross. It simply watched, its head tilted as if studying a broken puzzle. It became a fixture. The neighbors clucked their tongues. "Bad luck, that one," he heard the woman in 3B mutter. Arthur found himself agreeing. The cat's presence felt like a confirmation of his own misery. But the cat was relentless. Arthur started having violent nightmares, visions of falling, of his heart seizing. And each time he'd jolt awake to see a dark shape on his window ledge, staring into the dark room, its body rigid. Arthur would curse and pull the blanket over his head, blaming his racing heart on the creature. He was wrong. The cat wasn't causing the nightmares. It was responding to them. The line between the cat's presence and Arthur's unease blurred. A dull headache took root. A coppery taste flooded his mouth. He felt a constant hum of anxiety, a sense of impending doom he blamed on the jinx that followed him. One evening, as Arthur sat listlessly, the cat began scratching frantically at his door. It was urgent, desperate. Annoyed, Arthur yanked the door open. The cat didn't try to come in. It stared up, let out a single piercing yowl, and ran down the hall. It stopped, looked back, and yowled again. It was trying to lead him. A cold dread trickled down Arthur's spine. This felt intentional. Against every rational fiber, he took a step forward. The cat led him to a small, forgotten park he and Alara used to visit. It stopped in the exact center, sat down, and began to purr, a sound like a tiny, rumbling engine. And in that quiet park, something broke. The headache vanished. The metallic taste was gone. He sank onto a bench, and for the first time in years, he cried. The cat jumped up, settled beside him, and offered a moment of quiet solidarity. The dynamic shifted. Arthur began to see the intelligence in its eyes, not the judgment he noticed, how it watched him. Its gaze intense. It was studying him. One night, washing dishes, a wave of dizziness hit him. A searing pain spiked behind his eye. He stumbled, his legs giving way. He collapsed onto the cool tiles, the world swimming. This is it. Alone. But he wasn't alone. Through the blur, he saw the cat at the window. It wasn't just meowing, it was throwing its whole body against the glass. Thud, thud, thud. Then the sound of shattering glass. The cat hurled itself through the broken pane. It landed beside him, ignoring the cut on its shoulder, and pressed its head against Arthur's chest, purring louder than ever, a vibration that cut through the fog of his pain. With a final effort, Arthur's fingers found the phone and dragged it down. The paramedics found him there, a small black cat curled by his head. The hospital was a blur of muted lights and beeping machines. Arthur drifted in and out of a medicated haze. He overheard a nurse speaking to a doctor in the hall, her voice low. "Lucky you called when you did. That aneurysm. A few more hours." The words faded, but their meaning crystallized. The headaches, the taste, the nightmares. They weren't misfortune. They were a biological alarm. And the cat. The cat had been the only one listening. Recovery was a slow dawn. Arthur opened the curtains. He painted a wall a warm, buttery yellow. The ticking clock was silenced. He looked for the cat. He found it in their park, on their bench. It saw him and stood, a healing cut on its shoulder. Arthur simply sat and placed a bowl of food beside him. The cat watched him, then walked over. It ate. And then, as if it was the most natural thing, it jumped into his lap, turned 3 times, and settled, its purr resonating through his bones. He looked at the cat, this creature of shadow and silence, his guardian of the quiet hours. He didn't need a grand lesson about the world. He only needed to remember the sound of purring in the dark and the feel of a small, brave heart keeping time with his own. He looked at the cat, this creature of shadow and silence, his guardian of the quiet hours. He didn't need a grand lesson about the world. He only needed to remember the sound of purring in the dark and the feel of a small, brave heart keeping time with his own.